Joseph Stalin was born on December 18th, 1878, in the small town of Gori in Georgia. At the time, Georgia was part of the Russian Empire. Stalin was born into a poor family. His father, Bessarion, was a shoemaker whose alcoholism and violent behavior made the household unstable and frightening. His mother, Ketevan, worked long hours as a seamstress and hoped her son would escape poverty through education. From a young age, Stalin experienced illness, poverty, and physical abuse. He suffered from smallpox, which left scars on his face, and an injured arm that never fully healed. Despite these hardships, he was intelligent, determined, and drawn to reading. His mother believed he was destined for a religious life, and when he was 16, she sent him to study at the Tbilisi Theological Seminary. At the seminary, Stalin discovered revolutionary literature. He secretly read the works of Karl Marx and other radical thinkers. He began questioning religious teachings and challenging authority. Although he was a talented student, he was rebellious, often punished, and eventually expelled, officially for missing exams, but in reality because he had become a political agitator. Leaving the seminary marked the beginning of Stalin's transformation from a religious student into a revolutionary. After his expulsion, Stalin joined Marxist underground groups. He adopted several aliases, the most famous being Stalin, meaning man of steel. He organized workers' strikes, wrote propaganda, and participated in robberies to fund the Bolshevik movement. These robberies, known as expropriations, were violent and dangerous. During this period, Stalin was arrested multiple times and exiled to Siberia, but he repeatedly escaped. Stalin's loyalty to Lenin helped him rise quickly within the Bolshevik Party. He gained a reputation as a man who could carry out difficult, often brutal tasks without question. When the Russian Revolution broke out in 1917, Stalin became an important figure in the new Soviet government. After the revolution succeeded, he took on administrative roles, including managing the affairs of minority ethnic groups and overseeing internal party operations. In 1922, Stalin was appointed General Secretary of the Communist Party. At first, this seemed like a boring, bureaucratic position. However, Stalin understood its true power. The General Secretary controlled appointments. Quietly and systematically, he placed loyal supporters in key roles across the government. No one suspected that this position would allow him to dominate the entire Soviet Union. When Lenin died in 1924, a power struggle erupted. Many believed that Leon Trotsky, a brilliant speaker and military leader, would succeed Lenin. But Stalin outmaneuvered him. He used propaganda, alliances, and manipulation to isolate Trotsky. By the late 1920s, Trotsky was expelled from the Soviet Union, and Stalin had eliminated virtually all rivals. He had become the unquestioned leader of the Soviet state. With power secured, Stalin reshaped the Soviet Union according to his vision. He launched massive industrialization campaigns, forcing millions of peasants to join collective farms. This policy led to disaster. Poor planning, harsh quotas, and state grain seizures caused widespread famine. The most devastating occurred in Ukraine between 1932 and 1933, known as the Holodomor. Millions died from starvation, while the government denied the famine existed. Many historians estimate that between 4 and 7 million people perished during this period, as entire villages were left without food, and the Soviet authorities continued exporting grain abroad. Those who tried to flee famine-stricken areas were often stopped by internal passport controls, trapping countless families in regions where survival was nearly impossible. At the same time, Stalin built a personality cult around himself. Posters, statues, newspapers, and school books praised him as a wise, kind, and heroic leader. His portraits were hung in every public space. Children learned songs about him. Criticism became unthinkable. People whispered privately, knowing that even a small complaint could lead to arrest. The state rewrote history books to portray Stalin as Lenin's closest and most trusted ally, erasing rivals and exaggerating his achievements. Cities, factories, and even scientific discoveries were named after him, reinforcing the idea that Stalin was the guiding force behind every success of the Soviet Union. This manufactured image became so powerful that many citizens were afraid to admit, even to themselves, the reality behind it. In the late 1930s, Stalin initiated the Great Terror, also known as the Great Purge. He accused thousands of military officers, government officials, scientists, artists, and ordinary citizens of being traitors. Many were executed after show trials, while others were sent to the Gulag, a vast network of forced labor camps. Conditions in the Gulag were brutal. Prisoners worked in freezing temperatures with little food and inadequate shelter. Over the years, millions suffered and died in these camps. During the height of the Great Terror, more than 1 million people were arrested in a single year, and hundreds of thousands were executed. Entire branches of the military leadership were wiped out, weakening the Soviet army on the eve of World War II. The fear created by these purges penetrated every level of society, forcing people to suppress their thoughts and mistrust even their closest relatives. In 1939, Stalin shocked the world by signing a non-aggression pact with Nazi Germany. But in June 1941, Hitler broke the agreement and invaded the Soviet Union. Stalin was caught off guard, and the early months of the war were catastrophic. Entire armies were captured or destroyed. Yet the Soviet Union gradually pushed back. The battles of Moscow, Stalingrad, and Kursk became turning points. By 1945, the Red Army had marched into Berlin. The victory came at a terrible cost. More than 20 million Soviet citizens died. Many soldiers faced unimaginable suffering on the front lines, while civilians endured starvation, bombings, and mass evacuations. Despite the enormous loss of life, Stalin used the victory to reinforce his authority, portraying himself as the architect of triumph against fascism. During and after the war, Stalin emerged as a global superpower leader. He met with Winston Churchill and Franklin Roosevelt at the Tehran and Yalta conferences, shaping the future of post-war Europe. After the war ended, Stalin tightened control over Eastern European countries, turning them into Soviet satellite states. This expansion marked the beginning of the Cold War, a tense, decades-long conflict between the Soviet Union and the United States. Countries such as Poland, East Germany, Hungary, and Romania were forced into communist regimes loyal to Moscow. Political opposition was crushed, and Soviet-style secret police organizations were established to maintain control. Privately, Stalin was paranoid and distrustful. He rarely showed emotion. His second wife died under mysterious circumstances, and he had strained relationships with his children. Even his closest allies were afraid of him. At any moment, a loyal supporter could become an enemy. In his final years, Stalin's paranoia deepened further. He launched new purges targeting doctors, intellectuals, and party members, convinced that conspiracies surrounded him. Those who worked near him described an atmosphere of constant fear, where a single misinterpreted gesture could lead to arrest or disappearance. On March 5, 1953, Joseph Stalin died after suffering a stroke. His guards were too afraid to enter his room for hours, delaying help that might have saved him. After his death, Soviet leaders began to reveal the truth about his crimes. Nikita Khrushchev later denounced Stalin's brutality, exposing the mass killings, the lies, and the terror that had defined his rule. This speech shocked the world and initiated a period of political thaw, as many prisoners were released from the Gulag and some victims were posthumously rehabilitated. Stalin left behind a country transformed, industrialized, powerful, and feared, but also traumatized. His leadership caused the deaths of millions, and created a legacy of repression that shaped the Soviet Union for generations. Today, he is remembered as one of the most dangerous and destructive dictators in human history, a man whose pursuit of power and control cost countless lives and changed the course of the 20th century. His story remains a stark reminder of how absolute authority, combined with fear and propaganda, can reshape nations and alter the lives of millions.